So people don't trust large institutions to manage the data appropriately. And then on top of that, we're adding the element of AI and all the misinformation, disinformation that could come along with it.
I think people don't realize that most of these technologies don't have either moral agency or a decision on how they operate.
You essentially have to have a human in the loop.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you're seeing? Hi there, my name's Jamie Boyd, and I serve as our National Leader for Digital Government here within Deloitte Canada.
Hello everyone, my name is Aisha Green. I support the Generative AI Office here within Deloitte Canada.
We're here together today to dig into some big questions about Canada's future, about global disruption, about intersections between our various fields, and about the new dimensions that will be affecting Canadians. All right, Aisha, let's start with the first question. What's been the biggest disruption in Canada's business landscape over the past 5 years?
Well, Jamie, to be very honest with you, there's been a lot of disruption that's happening over the last couple of years, but I've got to put my hat in the race for Gen AI.
Says the Gen AI leader.
I know. Sorry to be a little bit biased on that, but it's true. Think about what's happened over the less than a year. So in 2022, when rumblings were happening about generative AI, people start to really take notice. 8 months after NVIDIA became a $1 trillion company, we have companies that are starting up from zero to scale in less than a year. When you think of the level of growth that has happened with those type of technology advancements, yes, most businesses are taking notice. So Jamie, over to you. Do you see disruption in Canada as an opportunity or a threat?
Well, I am very much a glass half full kind of person. I'm putting this one down as an opportunity. The disruptions that we're seeing are really about recognizing that disruption will be the new normal. The pace of change is unprecedented. We're seeing a massive increase in our capacity for compute, for storage. We're seeing a real democratization of access to these incredible tools.
Let's start with the definition first off. What is AI sovereignty?
For me, AI sovereignty is about the integrity of AI supply chains. So it's really about ensuring that we have the ability to provide AI services, develop AI tools with some degree of control or influence over the entire supply chain. That can mean production of chips, semiconductors. It means access to the talent. We're fortunate in Canada that we have exceptional post-secondary institutions. We are producing lots of data scientists and AI experts who can be building these tools. We also, I think, have a fairly strong commitment to adopting multidisciplinary approaches. So integrating people like AI ethicists into that supply chain. We also, however, have some challenges in terms of things like access to a Canadian influence or Canadian controlled supply chain of chips and compute power. So there are certainly opportunities for improvement. Let's go to the next one. Is the widespread availability of AI impacting our ability to trust information?
Ooh, so trust is a hard question to ask. And because trust is not something that you can always just give so easily, particularly in the age of what we are now seeing that is really changing our landscape is deepfakes. So deepfakes, very high level definition, is that ability for virtual agents or digital avatars to replicate everything that looks like humans. We also have that these deepfakes could be used for misinformation or disinformation. Many of the technologies that we use are considered to be a little bit black box. So we put stuff in, we're not sure how it works, but stuff comes out. Having a clear vision of what that is, giving some transparency on how it operates, could start to build trust and credibility, but also a path forward on how we start to develop practical regulations and policies on how we can govern the use of any types of technologies that may spread misinformation.
I've really enjoyed how some of the conversations have evolved in the last little while. We started talking about explainability, and now I think that the consensus is largely that if you essentially have to have a human in the loop.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you're seeing?
Yes, most definitely. I think people don't realize that most of these technologies don't have either moral agency or a decision on how they operate. In large part, it's the humans. It's the humans that are providing not only the insights and guidance on how they act, but but also how to act responsibly. So quite rightly, having the transparency enacted, having accountability and traceability for any information that these technologies impart is going to be critical, especially as it is applied to data. So all of the data that is ingested in these tools, whether it be proprietary or something that is open source, you do have to have an accountability to it. And that will help us guide not only the explainability of these tools, but also our trust as we look to use them in many different aspects of our work and our lives.
Well, and especially in an environment where levels of trust in organizations' ability to appropriately manage data are already pretty low. They're in the low 30s. And then on top of that, we're adding the element of AI and all the misinformation and disinformation that could come along with it.
So Jamie, I'm putting you back on the hot seat for this one. So for business leaders, disruption is on the forefront, but it's a bit scary. What should or are business leaders thinking about when it comes to disruption?
I think that the biggest concern is quite legitimate, and I don't want to be glib, but I think it's FOMO.
You gotta explain what FOMO is.
It's fear of missing out, and it is a legitimate concern. The world is moving so quickly. The pace of change is just incredible. And for people who are working hard to deliver business value, it's really tough to stay up to speed with all of these technical advances. And so in many cases, I think we're seeing larger enterprises that can dedicate the time and resources. They're getting themselves up to speed, and some of the smaller businesses across Canada are not necessarily in a position to make those proactive investments in some of the technologies that allow them to stay ahead of the curve. And so I say FOMO largely because I think that there are real opportunities to invest in productive capacity and look at some of our productivity challenges in Canada. And yet, they aren't always able to capitalize on those opportunities. So with the pace of change, I think that creates an imperative to invest in proactivity. All right, next question. What's one thing Canada can do to become a global player in the AI race?
Great question. I think the one thing that we can do, which we are already starting to do, is collaborate. Understanding the best practices that are happening across the board and understanding how we leverage it. Just as you said, our ethical practices is one that we can look at as a pillar of an example. But how we do it by just saying it is not enough. We have to put tactical and strategy in together to actually make a difference. And that is combining our collaboration with our strong ability for R&D research. So R&D research is where we stand out as Canadians. Believe it or not, we as Canadians have not only the best academic institutions, but also some of the largest output of our talent. So as Canadians trying to compete on the world stage, particularly as we're doing any types of new investments in AI, new technologies from semiconductors, can be challenging. When we look at behemoths like the US, China, other jurisdictions, how do we start to stand on those types of world stage when our investments just doesn't add up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, sadly, in many cases, we're a market taker here rather than a market maker. We are a smaller economy. At the same time, I think that we have an incredible opportunity to punch above our weight and really, really compete and win globally. What that requires, however, is a real focus on where we have that competitive advantage. And I think we have to be very diligent in recognizing our strengths within the geopolitical landscape when it comes to AI. Our research institutes are phenomenal. We have very bright people. And so when it comes to generative AI, understanding that we're probably not going to be a global titan when it comes to semiconductor production, for example, but we certainly can be when it comes to research capabilities. I also think that understanding where we can differentiate ourselves in a very competitive landscape makes a lot of sense. I would argue that Canada is well placed to compete and win as a global leader in ethical AI. We understand artificial intelligence well. We also have a strong commitment within our technology community to things like human-centered design and applying AI in ways that truly align with the needs of Canadians and users writ large.
I think that's a great point to end on. Thank you, Jamie, for this discussion. And I want to thank you as well for tuning into this discussion. We had a wealth of conversations about the geopolitical environment as well as AI and the intersection of the two. The dimensions of disruptions are large, they are meaty, but they are also interesting to also lead us forward into the future. We encourage you to reach out if you have more questions.